everyone, my name is Mahaya Bullock. To get started, I'm going to recite a poem that I wrote for First Generation Week. And shameless promo, there's a skit going on this Thursday at 4 o'clock, and this poem is from the skit. I am the first to spread my wings on this campus, soaring and exploring through the buildings, taking in the beautiful scenery presented amongst myself. I am the first to register for classes, purchasing textbooks, pens, and notebooks, stepping into that early morning class of learning. I am the first to succeed, staying up all night for that first exam, eyes closing slowly while attempting to absorb information. I am the first to stress until breathing is impossible, receiving that first red ink letter, realizing I am the first to fail. I am the first to learn money doesn't grow on trees, seeing my first negative number in my bank account, working my butt off to turn it into a positive. I am the first to cry when no one was watching, wishing someone understood the amount of pressure on my shoulders, wishing someone would hear my cry for help without making me feel weak. I am the first to make my dreams come true, learning lessons and discovering value along with truth, leaving a path behind for others to follow. I am the first to make my impact and my presence known, the first to have this experience, the first to fail, stress, succeed, and conquer. I am the first generation. And now, I would like to introduce Villanova University's 32nd president, Father Peter Donahue, a first-generation college student himself. Father Peter attended Villanova, where he earned a BA with a concentration in theater and communication arts. He went on to earn 2 master's degrees and a PhD on his way to joining Villanova's teaching faculty. Father has led the university since 2006, and his commitment to Villanova and to higher education has been unwavering. During his tenure, Villanova's graduation rate has risen from 87% to 91%. Enrollment of traditionally underrepresented students has risen by 50%. And the closing of the most recent capital campaign raised $167 million for endowed scholarships and financial aid to support Villanova students. Please join me in welcoming an example of just how much is possible for first-generation students, Father Peter Donahue.
Well, thank you all for being here. Unfortunately, the job I'm in calls me to a lot of different things, so I can't stay for the whole event, but I'm happy to be here. And I resonated with that poem. And that might seem hard to believe, but when I came to Villanova, I'll tell you a little bit about my story, so maybe you'll understand it better. I'm actually the second person in my family to go to college. My sister was the first, but I was the first male to go, and she went to a college local to where I grew up in Royal Oak, Michigan, which is outside of Detroit, and where we call things by different names. And so she went to a local place and kind of came back and forth to home fairly often because it was easy to commute back and forth. When I decided to go to Villanova University, which was in the state of Pennsylvania and quite far away from Detroit, it was an experience that I'm not sure I was really ready for, but that I was willing to take. And in those days, I never saw this campus. I never came here to visit. I didn't have a tour. There was no view books. There was nothing like that. You wrote away to the school, and they sent you a lot of information. There was no common app. They just sent you the application, and you sent in the stuff. And so the day I arrived on campus was the first day of orientation. And I arrived on campus by way of an airplane. I flew from Detroit to Philadelphia by myself with a suitcase and a bag, and a trunk was sent ahead of me. And I got to Philadelphia. My parents, the big thing about it was my parents had no experience in college, other than my sister going, and she was an hour drive away. So they packed up the car, they took her and dropped her off. But they weren't going to drive to Philadelphia. So it was, they took me to the airport, they said goodbye, put me on a plane. It was the first time I'd ever been on an airplane. And I flew out here and got to Philadelphia. And my father said, when you get to Philadelphia, ask somebody how to get to the local train. And when you get to the local train, figure out how to get to Villanova. So I got to 38th Street Station, asked how to get to Villanova. They said, you got to take it, at that time it was called the Paoli Local. They said, you can get on the Paoli Local and they'll announce Villanova. And I was going to, and this guy started opening the door every 5 minutes, going, oh, we're Marion, Martin. And I kept looking out the window, sooner or later it's going to show up. And so Villanova, and I grabbed the stuff and I got off and I thought, where am I? I don't know where I am and which way to go. And so I found my way. And I never went back home until Christmas break because we couldn't afford it. So I stayed here for the whole time. I went to my grandmother's for Thanksgiving. She lived in New York City. I should tell you, my father came over here from Ireland. Met my mother in New York. So I went to New York for Thanksgiving. And there was no fall break. There was no weekends home. There was no anything like that. And it was Christmas break came, and that's when you went home. So it was being away from what was familiar for a long, long time. And anybody that knew me when I was a freshman here at Villanova, they would have told you that I was a very shy, retiring, very quiet young man. They really didn't know me very well. But it took me a while to kind of find my footing here, and it took me a while to kind of spread my wings in this place. But it's an experience that I think many of you are familiar with. And many of you, if you're the first member of your family ever to go to college, or the first female or male ever to go to college, you know what it's like. There's a lot of questions, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's not a whole lot of at-home answers to what is going on because they're just not experienced with it. It's not part of their wheelhouse, it's not part of what they do. So you're constantly discovering how to be the first. And being the first means that, for me at least, being the first means that you are setting a path for many people to be the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and on and on and on. So all of us, in one way or another, are the starters of a new generation of people who have experienced college. Thank you very much. Enjoy the afternoon. I think you'll find these people inspiring. I know most of them. They all have a great story, and each one of you do as well. So it's important to share that story, and to share who you are, what you're about, and why you chose to be the first. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much, Bob President, for coming out, especially, and sharing your story with us. So my name is Dr. Krista Millett, and I teach in the Department of Education and Counseling, and I'll be overseeing the panel today. But maybe a surprise to the audience, but you also will be part of this event and experience. So eventually we're probably going to ask you to move and sit next to somebody if you aren't already to have some discussion. So we'll engage you all. So I want to start with our panel. Can we have each person introduce yourself and say something about what department you might be in, or if you're a student, what year you are, and what you study?
So I'm Ed Fieros. I'm Associate Dean for Diversity and Inclusion in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. I'm also Associate Professor in the Department of Education and Counseling.
I'm Nonora Minoska. I'm a senior English major with a Peace and Justice minor.
Waiting for more, because I know you do so much. Especially for this audience, I'm going to say it this way. I'm Dr. George James. I am affiliated with the CASA organization or office here, but I actually practice outside of Villanova. I'll share more about that in a little bit.
I'm Hezekiah Lewis. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Communication. Went here many moons ago, both graduate and undergrad.
Hi, I'm Stacy Havlick. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Education and Counseling. I do research on first-generation college students as well as being a first-gen student. And I run a group for first-generation college students in a high school in the School District of Philadelphia.
Thank you. Just to check in, can everyone in the back hear from there? You can hear all the speakers? Awesome. Okay. So I want to make sure we're all on the same definition. There are a few different definitions of first gen, but our panel of first gen here, we're going by this particular definition of the board. Individuals whose parents or guardians have not earned a bachelor's degree. And at Villanova University, about 1 of every 8 students is first gen. And we have quite a lot of faculty members who are also first gen and administrators who are first generation as well. First question for the panel. Could you share an experience of being first generation as a college goer?
It was a really long time ago, but my first experience was coming from an inner city underfunded school, Edgewood High School in San Antonio, Texas, and being near the top of my class, getting to college and realizing that I had not been prepared very well. And I also, and what I mean by not being prepared very well, sort of like Father Peter talked about, is I didn't have anybody in my family who had gone to college, so I didn't have anybody at home to tell me what to do once I got to school. So everything from financial aid to selecting schedules to figuring out the dorm situation was all new and challenging. And I just felt like I was failing every day. And it was really isolating. And it really took me a while to find people in that community to kind of get through it. But I didn't really like my college experience at first. It was really isolating and lonely.
Okay. One of my first experiences of realizing or coming to terms with being a first-generation student, I think first began with the application process alone for college and universities. My sister had gone through the application process but didn't complete it. So I couldn't ask my sister, my older sister, or my mother, or anyone in my household how the process looked, what to expect. If there were pieces of my application that were missing, I was the one to go to my house and look through all of our papers and documents to find what we needed, just so that I could go through the application process. I come from a Filipino immigrant home. And we did not have a lot of the resources, so applying online was a really hard challenge because we didn't have internet access, and my mom didn't know what else she could do to help me through that experience. So I found myself trying to find resources within my school, outside of my school, and with the institutions that I was applying at. And then once I was getting here, a lot of the same experiences of not knowing who to go to and what to expect, because I didn't feel like I was on the same timeline as everyone else.
I didn't realize I was a first-generation student until probably way after I graduated. I was fortunate enough to go to school here at Villanova undergraduate and to receive a scholarship that I didn't even know I qualified for. I didn't even know Villanova was offering a scholarship until I actually applied and received information that I somehow matched the requirements for the scholarship. A similar story, my parents are from another country. Both of my parents are from Jamaica. My father was illiterate. My mother didn't pass high school. And so education was a big theme in our house. And I didn't realize until much later that there was a certain age where I didn't actually ask my parents for help. And that became very normal for me. And I think that became part of my struggle on campus. I got used to just not asking for help, not seeking out help, being embarrassed about getting help, thinking that there was something wrong with me if I asked for help. And it took me a long time to figure out that that's actually how most students get ahead and how most people get ahead. It's through asking for help, it's through relationships. Those are just things I just didn't realize that I was doing and I was feeling internally, and that impacted me in multiple ways. And I saw that throughout my experience, and the reason why for me in this setting it was important to start off by saying I'm Dr. George James is because that was something that was valuable for my parents, for me to be able to get to that level. And it's funny that I worked that hard to get to that level, and in most of the settings, we don't use that title. We use first names. And so it gets stripped away in multiple ways, or even I feel a little bit of shame to acknowledge that. And I think that comes from being a first generation, and the thought of like owning the parts of me that I worked hard for because of how hard my parents worked and how much they instilled the importance of education. So there are lots of things that can happen or you can feel, and those are some of my struggles, both on campus as well as after leaving Villanova.
I say for me, it really started kind of early during my high school experience. Being from San Bernardino, California, it was a very drug-infested and kind of a gang-banging environment. And for me, the community really protected me because they didn't want me to kind of fall into those kind of traps of getting involved with drugs and gangs. And I was an athlete, and they wanted, it was almost like by me making it to the university, I was also making it for everyone else, not just my family, but a lot of people in my community. So they make sure I veered away from any violence or negativity, but it would always kind of seep into our area. So by going through the process, not having a father in the household, my mother didn't go to college, so we didn't have anybody to really kind of fall back on to ask questions about the recruiting process, for example. So I had no idea about, financial aid and scholarships, and all I wanted to hear was full ride scholarship to, a university as far away from California as possible. So I turned down Cornell, I turned down West Point, I turned down Princeton, because they said they do a financial aid packet. I was like, well, that's not a full ride scholarship, but it really was. But me being ignorant to like that whole process, I didn't know the kind of quality of education I was turning down at the same time. But football was like always in the forefront because, growing up, it was all about entertainment and football. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure that I was going to a school that also had a strong academic, background as well. So I had an idea to take 5 different trips, and, Villanova was my first kind of far away trip. And, that recruiting trip, they really fooled me. I mean, I had a really good time, and they took me to UPenn, and I was like, oh, wow, all these black people here. We having parties every weekend. And I got here, I was like, what happened to all the black folks, So I was like, but it was like they did a really good job recruiting, but at the same time, I don't regret being here because I feel like it really changed my life. But I just, I knew it at that time because I was more of a commodity when it came to sports and entertainment as opposed to academics. And, my counselors weren't really helping me with the academic scholarships. They said, oh, no, you're going to make it in football. But they didn't understand it was a business. And I had to learn that at an early age. You were a piece of meat as an athlete. So by you making these decisions, it's not really based off of your intellect. It's really based off of your skill sets on the field. And that, to me, was completely disrespectful. So when I got here, I took control over my education. I didn't allow, advisors and everybody to kind of pick my classes for me. And, I respectfully thank, the football team. But I said from this point on, I'll be taking care of my education. And I took, 21 credits every semester, went to summer school, had 2 majors, 3 minors, because I wanted to really take advantage of that opportunity because I knew no one else in my family ever had this opportunity. So I lived a lot of my life trying to, make people happy, which is also not a good thing. We can talk about that later. But at the same time, I knew that I was setting an example for a whole community, not just my family.
So similar actually to both of the 2 prior presenters, Hezekiah and James, I first of all, I didn't really realize that I was first generation when I got to college, and I didn't realize probably until the past few years when I've done more and more research, and so it's helped me to understand my college experience a little bit more. I too was a student athlete in college, and I think that was an interesting experience in high school because my focus was more on playing sports than it was on education. And without parents to guide me to make the choices, I made choices based on scholarships, and I made choices based on where I thought was gonna look the best for me to be an athlete versus a student. And I remember being in high school and my friends, as they were going through this college process, their parents were always so supportive in doing things for them. And my parents, who were super supportive, would always say to me, how can I help? Let me know what I can do. But I never knew what to tell them, and I didn't understand why I didn't know what to ask for until I got older and started to get that experience of being first gen, that I didn't know what I didn't know. And then when I got to college, I focused more on athletics for my first 2 years because that was my identity and that was why I thought I was there. And I always say it took me 2 years in college to learn how to learn. And it really wasn't, I kind of got average grades my first 2 years of college because I was more focused on my social life and athletics. And then my second 2 years, my junior and senior year, is when I really focused on academics and I focused on my career and where I was going to go. But I didn't really know what resources were available. I remember wanting to get involved at the university, but I didn't know what to do. So I stuck to my team and what I knew there, and I think I missed out on different opportunities that I could have had.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask the audience members now, could you turn to one person next to you or two people next to you, talk a little bit about your connection to the first generation college goer experience or your connection to other first generation college goers. Name a strength or something that helped you persist and survive and thrive through college.
Oh boy, I love being first. It's ironic, I think. I think one of my strengths was, it's sort of a liken to what we were talking about before, but is my personality lent itself to at least meeting other people and trusting that what they were, I basically copied and pasted my college going experience. I found people that I thought were succeeding and I would try to follow what they did. And I tried to befriend them. And my good friend Chris Meyer, who lives in Washington, D.C. and works for the Navy. No, he works for the Navy. We still keep in touch, and I frequently blame him for everything about going to college because I pretty much followed what he did. But I think if there's a lesson in that is that you need to find someone that you trust that can be just sort of your guide to ask questions and to help you.
I would absolutely 100% agree with that. Just knowing who your connections are, who your support system is, and making sure that they understand who you are, so that when you're not in the room, that they can still vouch for you. I think that's definitely key. But I also say that a strength that I have found in myself from being a first-generation student is being really resilient and knowing how to bounce back after you fall, because you are bound to mess up in life, and no matter what you do. And I feel like there's a lot of pressure for first-generation students to not mess up, so it makes that fall seem a lot worse than what it actually is. But knowing that you have so much more to accomplish makes you want to get back up twice as fast, and knowing how to do so and making sure that it doesn't stick to you too long, because then it's going to mess up the whole path that you create for yourself. So not letting your failures that you come across define you and keep you down, and knowing how to get back up.
For all the things that I could say that my parents might not have had, the things that they gave me outweighed those few things. And their faith, their belief in me, how I could always count on them. And as a result, I realized there were so many things that I inherited from my parents. And one of those things is my drive and my ambition, and that you're just not going to stop me. That no matter what happens, no matter what goes down, whether it doesn't work out, whether when I do fall, I'm going to pick myself up. Well, no, I've been picked up by lots of other people. And as a result, as a result of that, that has also increased my loyalty and my desire to help pick up other people. It's part of the work I do. It is part of my ambition, is that my goal is that I'm going to succeed because of all those people, including my parents, but I'm also going to help others. And so that is the strength that I bring. I have a great deal of hope because my parents consistently had hope for me and my future. What they couldn't achieve, they believed that I could achieve. And that's been such a value to be able to come back and let them know this is what I was able to do, even when they couldn't fully grasp it, to be able to say, your hard work, your prayers, your patience, your faith in me allowed me to achieve this. And then my ability to still be connected to Villanova is to help other students achieve the same thing.
I think my strength is family, but more specifically my mother and my daughter. I had a daughter on September 18th at 7:47 a.m. My freshman year at Villanova. So I was a baby having a baby. And when I had my child, that really reinforced the importance of me actually making it through. And for me, it was I always say she was one of my inspirations. And it's, sometimes it's odd to have somebody younger than you being your inspiration, but nah, she was my role model. And my mother, without my mother and my family actually being there for me and taking my girlfriend at the time in and my daughter in and giving me the opportunity to stay the course and making sure that I'm actually going to finish this education, because she knew at that time how important it was for me to continue and stay focused here. And fast forwarding to 2 years ago, my daughter graduated from Villanova. So it was. And for me, it just showed this that sense of this perseverance and passion and dedication to, believing who you are and understanding that you can compete. Like, I was not the smartest, was not the fastest, was not the, the brightest person. I came here with a chip on my shoulder. I came here with this kind of, mindset of, I wanted to fight the world physically. I was 160 pounds when I got here. Fought everybody on the football team, was always on fire, got kicked out of practice numerous times. Coach is telling me I'm practicing with too much fire. I challenged every professor that I had, but it was that kind of drive and that perseverance. And what reminded me of my purpose was my daughter. And I really had to sit back and really think, if I fail, she's not going to have that opportunity. Not only did my daughter graduate from here, my sister, my younger sister, actually graduated from Villanova as well. So there is a ripple effect that has started because I was that first generation, not just in my family, but in my community. And when I look back, every time I go back home, I just see, droves of people and students and family members who are loving life because they went through this college experience. So is it made for everyone? Of course not. I don't look down on any of my friends who did not make it, because I'll be a hypocrite if I said, if I can do it, you can do it. But there's a lot of things that are restricting us. There's a lot of systems and things like that are really plucking the black family and bringing folks from the especially the males out of the black family structure. That's not that are kind of roadblocks. But at the same time, I don't want to victimize us, because I think we are very powerful people. I think we are very, passionate folks. But I think what it really comes down to is everybody on this panel has different strengths. But for me, I feel like my daughter was the one that really made me hone in that focus and make sure I understood. I never will forget where I came from, but I'm open to where I'm going.
For me, I think I had very supportive parents, and so I always wanted to achieve for them, and I wanted to prove to them, even though I don't feel like they were pressuring me to do well, but they were so supportive of me, so I felt like I had to do well for them. But I also feel like I have a strength in I'm super persistent, and I'm competitive in the most positive sense, that I constantly have to do better than I just did. So I'm always I'm not necessarily competing with others, but I'm competing with myself to kind of get better than I was before. And so that helped me to persist in college, because I had friends who didn't make it and who failed out. And I think in some ways that challenged me even more, because I would see them not doing well, and I felt like I'm not going to go down that path. I'm going to go in the opposite direction. So I kept kind of persisting through that.
Thank you so much. Inspiring stories. I'm going to turn it over to the audience. Chat with a neighbor. What was your strength, or what is your strength? Or if you're supporting first-gen students, how do you bring out those strengths and sort of nurture those to support them? So, could I get some audience members who'd be willing to just shout out? Give me some of your strengths. Yes, Matt.
So, my strength is, I would say, not getting in. So, I live around Philly. So not getting into the high school that was my choice was really one of my big like strengths. Just because I was young, I was thinking like, oh snap, if I don't go exceptional, or like typical high school, like, where everyone was gonna go, was smart, I'm not gonna make it in life. And then when I realized that the opportunities, the people I met, the network, the people who I networked with, and the community, the connections I made with all the people, for me to even be here today, it was like just a great experience and a great like value, something I took upon myself to say, oh, it doesn't matter where you go, it's what you make out of it.
Right.
So that's what I took. And that's
You made the most out of it.
Good
Great.
stuff.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
What high school do you go to?
I go to Abraham Lincoln High School.
Lincoln? Okay, cool. I'm from Philly, so I got you.
Sure.
I'm from Lincoln as well. My name is Justice. A big thing for me was communication and just networking with people, because when I came in that grade year, I was like, okay, I don't know what I want to do, but I want to find a way so I can find my passion, find what drives me, and it's going to lead to my career. So what I did was I joined a whole bunch of clubs, and through that, I was like, okay, I dabbled in that. And I was like, okay, I don't want that. Neuroscience, not me. So I dabbled into many things so I could find my strengths and what I would eventually, pursue in life. Because if I don't experience it, or like if I just read it in a book, I can't get that connection. I can't find if that's what I wanted to do in life. So I was like, that and networking, just trying to find those connections to other opportunities was really big for me, and I just love that. Like, I would ask people for their business cards all the time, and I'm definitely gonna ask for yours too. All of them, because I value connections. I love talking to people. I love hearing about their experiences. I appreciate all of you on this panel. It's so amazing.
That's real good.
Yes. So.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Networking and trying new things. Just keep trying. Absolutely. Other? Can I get at least one more strength? Yes.
My name is Luis. I'm from San Diego, California. And my big strength was for sure my family. I come from a huge Mexican family. I'm the youngest on both sides of the family. So growing up, it was always like, my dad would always be like, yeah, if anyone can figure it out, Luis can figure it out. So just hearing that, even when I had no clue what was going on, it was like, all right, I guess I can figure it out. So just always having that belief system behind me, and like the fact that even when I was like, completely lost, my dad would be like, yeah, you got it. So it's like, that was my big strength.
Okay. Believing in yourself. You'll figure it out. I know sometimes women are taught not to sort of talk good about themselves or talk themselves up, but I'd love to hear from one female in the audience, one strength. Yes.
I guess not necessarily like a strength, but more so like a motivation for me. I think because I grew up in Philly as well, so a house. So just seeing like the conditions of my city and like the neighborhoods and like how everybody, well not everybody, how a lot of people weren't given a lot of opportunities that I was given. Keeping that in mind throughout my process of going to different private schools and Catholic schools and stuff like that, it kind of motivated me to just do my best, because I knew that a lot of people didn't have that same opportunity. So it was almost like an obligation, like this is something that should be given, this is the opportunity, make sure that you do the best, with what you're given. So.
Sure. Obligation and appreciation for the opportunities you have. Absolutely. Do I have anyone else that wants to share?
So for me, my story similar to Hattie. I was a mom, so I had no choice but to get it done. And I always tell my students, when I first was doing college, I was doing it by myself, raising my daughter at the same time, and it took me 7 years to get my undergraduate degree. And I tell people that story because I didn't know who to reach out to. I was like, okay, I'm not doing well in this class. Who do I talk to? I didn't have those resources until I got to the school I graduated from, and I was fortunate enough to have just a woman who just took me under her wing and basically showed me the way, kind of mentored me through the process. And so, I've been through the ups and downs of having good grades and not so good grades, and going part-time and full-time, and taking time off because I was a commuter student. But when it's all said and done here, and able, so then when I talk to my daughter, it's like, okay, this is what we got to do here. So, so I learned how to, make sure that she had the resources in front of her to not have to jump through as many hoops that I had to jump through to get to the end result. So yeah, it was a lot. It took me 7 years, but I survived. I survived.
Patience and persistence.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's my boss right
At
there.
this point, we have about 6 minutes. I'm going to open up the floor if you'd like to ask one of the panel members or all the panel members a question.
Kiana, you don't got a question?
You shouting people out.
Question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was your mentor?
This is for
Whole panel. Okay. Who was your mentor?
Yes, I think, to be perfectly honest, my mentor is my wife, Judy Giesberg, who's a professor here. I met her in 1985, and she showed me how to do school.
Oh.
That works. That's right.
I think I have several mentors, right? You can have several mentors depending on all my students in the back are pointing at them.
Are they your mentors?
I've had several mentors in my life. Miss Nicole Davis, who shared her story with us, she's definitely one of my mentors. She knew me since I was a freshman in high school and has been with me since. Oh my gosh, I can't even, there's a lot. We also have like formal and not so formal mentors, so I would say the mothers of my friends, those are my mentors, absolutely. My old high school teachers who still support me in everything that I do, they're absolutely my mentors. Anyone that I think that I've learned my friends absolutely that I'm in college with that understand who I am and live different lives than me and like are pursuing different challenges, they're also my mentors. Anyone that I see is doing what I want to do, I consider them a mentor.
I agree. The two kind of mentors that have been in my life for the longest are two men that when I go to them, they are going to share and be open. If I try to take them out for lunch, they will not let me pay. They're just in the position where they're just going to give consistently and constantly to me. One is who used to be the former CEO of the place where I practice therapy, and he's had lots of opportunities, and my career has been somewhat fashioned in the way that his career is. The other is the pastor of my church, who I can go to and ask lots of different questions about life and perspective, and they've always been willing, and they're extremely busy men, but have made time for me. And to Ed's point, my wife has also been very inspirational for me, and when she finished her doctorate before me, I'm like, I gotta finish mine, right? There's a way that I've seen her work hard and be committed to the process. I'm like, okay, I guess that is what it takes, and that's what I need to do myself. And so there's a way that I respect her tremendously in what she has done, and I've gained so much value from being connected with her over these years.
My number one, I guess, mentor is my mother. Like, she's been my inspiration, like I said before, from day one. She's my role model, my mentor, everything. Then, coming to Villanova, Father Peter was a major influence on me, got me back into the arts my sophomore year, got back into acting in plays and things like that. And, Dr. Nance, I'm not sure if you met Dr. Terry Nance, but she's definitely was one of the biggest influences on me being here and still to this day. And, and Coach Talley, Andy Talley, by giving me the scholarship, it wasn't just, I always tell people all the time, he saved my life. This football scholarship was more than just education. It was a life-changing experience, and, like I said, got me off those streets and really, helped me forge an opportunity. And, even today with my wife, once again, I'm proud to say she makes way more money than I do, and I'm always inspired by her and this being a mother and seeing how she just took on our 3-year-old now. I'm crazy. I have a 23-year-old and a 3-year-old, and actually, you know, seeing how she just perseveres, and I mean, she's out the door at 5:30 every morning, and you know, and my son is a lot of work, and you know, she still is like, you know, counseling students in high school and all those, you know, issues in high school. I don't know how y'all deal with it in high school. I mean, it's insane, but she's just an amazing inspiration to me, and I'm very impressed by the way she handles life skills as a whole. So.
For me, honestly, I can't say that I had strong mentorships in college and undergrad. It really wasn't until I went for my master's, which was right after I graduated, and there were two women there who were faculty of color, Norma Davines and Julia Bryan, who were counselor educators, and both did a lot of work in terms of social justice and focused on closing achievement gaps with students. And so they really worked with me and kind of brought to light some of the issues that were going on in schools around us. And so it inspired my research and my line of work from my master's on.
Thank you. Maybe we have just a minute for a brief final question.
So, what do you do when you're down? Like, say you really do struggle, and like, I say you wouldn't really have a mentor, or you really wouldn't have someone to talk to, but like, what really would, I said, keep you going other than like motivation? Like, what do you, step by step, like a 3-step thing, you got a 3-step plan, what would you do if you just were stuck? And I can go for anyone.
I guess I'll start that. For me, 3 steps. 1 is my faith, because that's been central for me all throughout my life. 2 is I find somebody that I can talk to that maybe can give me some perspective. And then 2, and then 3, I realize that most things are a phase, and if I can just allow the phase to go by, then I can move forward to the next step versus letting the phase take me out.
I mean, for me personally, it's like I don't really have steps. For me, it's very organic. You know, I just got back from Ethiopia. I took a class to Ethiopia recently, and every year we go to a different country and we make a film about social justice and evoking positive social change. So when I get back, I always warn students, like, it's going to be a hard transition for you to come back and realize this is bigger than us. It's a global society, you know, and really understanding, like, we should appreciate things that we have. And, you know, I can't even compare the poverty that we encounter. But seeing the smiles on those folks' faces and just seeing how hard they persevere and how passionate they are about life and how they love life, sometimes it's hard for us to realize those things, and because we're so inundated with like the instant gratification, move, got to make more, got to make money, and for me, it just always puts things really into perspective when I'm going to these different communities. I don't teach them anything in these communities. I learn from these communities, and by just really having conversations with people that don't look like you, don't speak the same language, but that human interaction is more than enough to kind of bring my spirits back up and understand that it's worth living. You know, I always say, you know, live to love, love to live. And, you know, and there's nothing that can hold me back. And don't be afraid. I fear no one but God. So that kind of sense of, you know, reality. So.
We'll probably have time for about one more panel response.
I guess I could say, well, my little go-to plan. When I'm feeling down, one, recognizing that feeling and putting a name to it, right? Like if I'm feeling down, like what am I feeling down about? Like, am I sad? Am I disappointed? Am I aggravated? Am I frustrated? You know, kind of naming what that is, and sitting with that. Like, it's okay to feel that way because it's a valid feeling, right? Like, understanding that you're feeling this, right? And then the second step, if you want to put steps to it, I guess, it's kind of just sitting back and thinking about where that stems from, right? Like, why are you feeling that way? Is it because you had expectations that didn't pan out the way that you wanted? Is it because you know that you could have done better, but you didn't? And then after that, you figure out a way to change that, right? Like, if you know that you have another challenge coming up, how can you best prep for that so you don't feel that feeling again? Or how can you best prepare so that you're in about, like, you can handle that emotion differently? Does that make sense? So, okay.
On our campuses, we have providing lots of different supports, but we have a counseling center as well that students go to and use on a regular basis for deep problems or light problems too. So there are lots of resources on campus and lots of people to talk to. You just have to cultivate those connections. I want to end with getting some feedback from you all. What do you want to take with you? Go ahead and just give a shout out, one word, one sentence. What are you leaving with? Optimism. Yeah. Live to love, love to live.
That's a good one.
As students, we have the responsibility to look out for one another.
As students, we have the responsibility to look out for one another.
Yes.
I mean, one more. Making the impossible possible. Thank you so much. I want to thank our panel speakers today.